we're giving up with the microphones now because they're a bit too squeaky apparently. I'd just like to introduce you to Pippa Bartolotti from Wales, Peter Cranie from the Northwest, and Natalie Bennett from
Camden, London.
From Camden, London, okay. We're going to have the same format. We're going to have the written question again that's been submitted. So I'll read it out in case we've got any new people or in case you've forgotten. It's from Central Lancashire, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes on this. Please describe your general political philosophy, and following on from that, give 3 different policies from 3 different policy areas which you would think are urgent and important to implement and which would be electorally popular. Can I start with you, Natalie?
Okay. You may wonder why we're all laughing up the front.
Give you closing.
You may wonder why we're all laughing up front. That's because we've been together 5 times, and somehow random allocation has meant 5 times I've been the first person to speak. Anyone out there who's a betting person who believes in omens might like to look at that one. But to answer the question, my political philosophy, well, actually, I think someone, I've forgotten who it was on Twitter, summed this up quite well, and they described me as post-watermelon. Not anti-watermelon, but post-watermelon. Because I'm absolutely committed to the anti-austerity, anti-cuts agenda, but I don't think that goes anything like far enough. We have to radically transform the whole way our economy works to make it much fairer and to be ready for a low-carbon world. Just talking about being anti-austerity implies we just want to be like the Labour Party, go back to 2006 and everything was fine in 2006. And I absolutely don't think that was true. More than a quarter of pensioners were living in poverty, more than a quarter of children were living in poverty, and of course we were consuming 3 planets when we've only got 1 to live on. So I describe myself, I've taken it up as post-watermelon because I think that sums up the fact I want to entirely transform the whole of British society, and I think that's the only option for the future of British society. 3 policies very quickly: invest in jobs, relocalise our economy, our food supplies, our manufacturing, our local services, and decent incomes for all. That means the living wage, the minimum wage simply should be a living wage, no ifs, no buts. If you work full time, you should earn enough money to live on. And benefits. Anyone on benefits should be able to have a decent life. And we've seen huge demonisation of the disabled, of other people, of the home benefits, of all of those kind of benefits. We have to say benefits are right and proper, and they should give everyone a decent standard of life. Thank you.
What's my political philosophy? My uncle was a miner. My grandfather was a miner. My great-grandfather was a miner who was blacklisted after the general strike of 1926 and didn't work again until the outbreak of the Second World War. My political philosophy is of the left. It's historical, it's cultural. Where I was brought up, you supported Celtic and you voted Labour. And that was it, and the 2 were equal. You can't give up supporting your team, you can't give up supporting your team. And that was the way that it was expected. And so being in the Green Party has been a bit of a challenge to some members of my family who still support other parties, but are gradually moving. But that's the cultural heritage that I bring. What 3 points, what 3 policies are really crucial? The first one is the economy. If we're not talking about the economy, we are not talking about what is affecting people every single day in the modern climate. It's affecting them in terms of whether they can have a job, whether they can afford to pay their bills. These are the things that we need to be communicating in language that people understand, because that's what's affecting them in their lives. So first and foremost, the economy. Secondly, housing. Everyone has to live somewhere. Housing is having a huge impact on people's lives. We're talking about the cost of living, we're talking about bills, but this is everyone here across the board. People are threatened with eviction, people are being priced out of being able to live in London, they're being socially cleansed out of London by these far-right policies that are being implemented by this government. So housing is the second one, and we've already got a great track record in terms of what our council groups have been doing in terms of bringing in insulation, lowering people's fuel bills. So it's a really good thing for us to go on. But finally, and ultimately, climate change. This weekend, the forecast for Greenland is above 0 degrees. The entirety of Greenland, the forecast is above 0 degrees. In 1979, there was 18,000 cubic kilometres of solid ice in the summer at the North Pole, Arctic sea ice. Last year, there was only 4,000 cubic kilometres. Climate change. We must continue to talk about it. Thank you.
Well, in terms of philosophy, I didn't have a political philosophy for about the first 40 years of my life. But I did have a philosophy, and that was the land. Because I was born a country girl, I was born by the sea, and I was born in Cornwall, where there was a lot of small farming, a lot of low-scale agriculture, and my philosophy was always the land. I've always grown stuff. I still grow lots of stuff, only to eat, I might add. So, if you can't eat it, don't grow it. It's like if it needs ironing, don't buy it. So my philosophy is the land. And when I saw as I was growing up, I mean, when I talk about ages of 9, 10, when I saw such things as Aberfan, when the tip landed on that school, I never forgot what we can do to the land. And that made a huge impression on me. When I came back from living a while in Cuba, I decided I knew more about Cuban philosophy than I did about our own, so I set 2 on the internet: Labour, Conservative, Liberals, and Greens. And I saw the Green political philosophy, and I fell madly in love. And I joined up within minutes of actually reading it. So my political philosophy is green. 3 policy areas, sorry, only 2. Climate and equality. Everything we do springs from those 2 words. Climate change, I agree so much with this man here. Climate change, if the IPC says we've only got 10 years to reduce the trend of climate change, I don't think 10 years is enough. And it's certainly not enough to be reasonable and polite, as someone was saying earlier. It's not very much time. We have to be talking about it. And no matter what you say about us being a one policy party, it's impossible for a Green to talk about climate change without being passionate about our economic policies and our social policies. So it's going to be climate, or when it's going to be equality.
Thank you. That's given us a good introduction to the philosophies of the candidates. Does anyone want to come back at this point before we start on the questions? No? Okay, let's go straight for the
I'm John the one from Fleetwood. I read today, or it might have been yesterday, I'm going back to the benefits. Job seekers allowance to put more into the economy, only slightly, than 2 lots of Osborne's quantitative easing. Job seekers allowance.
Sorry, could you be specific about what it is you want the candidates to respond to? They've given you an idea of their philosophy. You want to question them on what they've said so far.
I was just saying that this has been 2.1 billion is job seekers allowance, is what they say, from 2010. They've pushed, if you put that into the economy, it turns out 6.3 billion. And from the bankers' handout, call it what you want, only 6 billion has gone into our economy. And when Natalie was talking about the job seekers, it's got to be fair. I'm just making the point as it's already delivering, or we should put more into it.
Okay. Alex?
Yeah. If there was one piece of national legislation as leader, would you campaign and communicate around it?
Actually, we'll take that as the first question. And can I have 2 more questions?
Immigration.
Sorry, who are you?
I'm Richard from Manchester Green Party. Immigration and overpopulation are 2 issues that some Green Party politicians seem very uncomfortable talking about. If somebody perceived there to be an immigration issue in their local community, what would you say to them to make them understand our approach to those issues?
And the third one, can I take Clive at the back there?
I'm sure other people here will know what my question's about, but people don't know it. In 2009, a report called Dynamic Benefits was produced by a think tank which was set up by Ian Duncan Smith. If you look at page 88 of that report, it produces a graph which shows the withdrawal benefits, as in other words, the poverty trap, as though they were taxes. Now, a similar figure to that is in my book, by £10 if you buy it from me.
Hey, you charged me 15.
In benefits, it's far better, it's far more up to date, and it's far more detailed. Now, the point is,
Can I ask you to address the question?
Yes, the question.
Yeah.
The point I'm making is that the withdrawal of benefits is actually a massive tax on those in the poverty trap, anybody who's subject to it. Now, I've managed up to now not to say citizens' income, which is the logical answer. Now, I'm not asking any of you candidates, any of you as leader, to mention the city of income. Let other people come back at you with it. Because the point is, anybody who supports the existence of that poverty trap has to answer that question. What is an answer? What answer have they got? So I'm asking you all to grasp a nettle. The question is, will you please start to get on Ian Duncan Smith's back about why he is trying to ignore the report which he commissioned?
Right.